This is the last installment on Nicole's questions. And then we will, next time, we will start the installment on Venerable Kunga's questions, which mostly center around emptiness and dependent arising. Okay, so here Nicole is saying, she says, I feel like I'm making progress on putting together some understanding of refuge and rebirth, but the order of the pieces does not match the lamrim. Terrible. For instance, I feel more motivated to be able to benefit sentient beings in this life, future lives, or as a Buddha, than to avoid my own suffering in the hell realm. And on this basis, I want to practice the Dharma. Okay, so two things here. One about the order, yeah, and the second about your particular motivation, okay, and how that relates to the order. So sometimes we, when we read the lamrim and we hear how it's put together as a step-by-step process, which, by the way, is for somebody who is about to take initiation or empowerment into highest yoga tantra. That's who the audience for the lamrim is. We encounter the lamrim and we're just told it starts from the beginning of the path and goes onward, but we don't generally know that it's for a particular audience who has done a lot of philosophical study, who understands refuge, who believes in rebirth, and so on and so forth. Okay? So then when we start to practice, and the first thing we hit is reliance on a spiritual master, and we're going, but wait a minute, I'm just coming to learn how to calm my mind. And what's all this stuff? And, on and on about the spiritual master. And then, okay, well, then the next step, precious human life. Oh my God, they're talking about rebirth. What in the world is rebirth? And I'm supposed to be happy about not being born in the hell realm. Why? And huh? Who said I was born in the hell realm before? So it was written in a different circumstance for a particular audience. Okay, so the order is not something totally rigid. Yeah. Often, there's some things that you have to master before other things. Otherwise the puzzle pieces don't fit together. For example, they insist we should have serenity before we gain insight. And that makes sense because full insight is the union of serenity and insight. It's not just insight alone, it's the union of the two. So of course you have to have serenity beforehand, okay? And you have to have some notion of renunciation to motivate you to want to get out of samsara, okay? And to learn about emptiness and so on and so forth, okay? But we often hear this as, okay, first I have to have 100%, know how to rely on a spiritual master. Then 100% feeling like the value of my precious human life. Then 100% day and night, unceasingly being aware of my mortality. And I have to do all those before I get anything higher. And then our mind gets a little bit rigid, okay? Whereas actually how it works, I think, there is a method of teaching lamrim where you do it like that, but I think actually how it works, as my observation of how the Tibetan community practices, is that you learn the entire lamrim, you practice all the different stages as best as you can, and at the same time emphasize the ones that are, easier, that really set a foundation for you. Okay. So without feeling like, I have to master this before you get to that. So, for example, here, understanding rebirth and refuge. Yeah. What we found in teaching people who didn't grow up as Buddhists is that, they have to have some feeling of rebirth, to really understand deeply many of the other meditations. But understanding refuge is actually going to take quite a while. In the normal rebirth, in the normal lamrim, it's put very early on the path as, something for the person of the initial level scope. But we found in doing the SAFE program that people are not ready for that then. It entails too much other understanding, and that actually at that point they're more interested in understanding karma and how karma works. And we don't assume that people understand rebirth at the beginning. I mean, clearly, if you're going to take highest class Tantra initiation and actually practice that, you should have that kind of foundation. If you don't believe in rebirth, and bodhicitta doesn't have much meaning. And without bodhicitta having some meaning in your heart, actually engaging in highest class Tantra and expecting to gain realizations is a bit too much. Putting your seeds by practicing your sadhana, that's good. You can do it that way, but don't expect to get the realizations. Yeah. And rebirth, we can, that, as I've explained before, is something that we can understand through logic and reasoning, really contemplating how effects arise from causes that correspond to those effects, and then tracing back what the causes of the body are, what the causes of consciousness are, and so forth. And so you can start out, thinking about those kinds of things. It may take you a while to really understand it, but you get some flavor of it, and your mind kind of opens to think, well, yeah, rebirth may be possible. Okay, so basically, my point here is don't get stuck by thinking that you have to actualize every single thing in order. Yeah, because so much also depends on the person, their disposition, their interests. Yeah. And throughout the Dharma, we see that happening. Even in highest class Tantra, one person will say, well, the subtle nervous system is like this, and another Lama says, no, it's like that. And His Holiness explains, well, that's because not everybody's subtle nervous system necessarily is exactly the same. Yeah. So, yeah. So don't get hooked on, everything in order. On the other hand, don't skip the things that are at the beginning that as newcomers to Buddhism, we need some familiarity with. Because you want to go to the high practices because you think you're, a very educated person and you're ready for those. Being highly educated according to, or intelligence in Western standards, does not equate to being a receptive and good disciple in Buddhist standards. Okay. In fact, we find some of the people who are the most intelligent with the highest IQs, when it comes to understanding certain Buddhist things, they're completely out to lunch. They can't get it at all. So, that depends on your purification, your accumulation of merit. Okay. Then the second thing, about your particular motivation, that you feel more motivated to be able to benefit others in this life and future lives and as a Buddha than to avoid your own suffering in the hell realms. Okay, so that's quite altruistic. That's very wonderful. Okay, and that's good. But, or maybe I should say, and that comes from not really believing that we could be other than who we are now. Yeah, that comes because the appearance of this life is so strong and it appears so real that we can't even really think that we could be born as another person in another realm of existence. Yeah, we're so certain that I am who I am now, And when I think about this, it's like, well, I'm always going to think in English. Yeah, even, okay, maybe I have a different body or I'm in the bardo, but I'm going to be thinking in English. Yeah, really? No, English is just something that I learned this life. And, chances are in future lives, I'm not going to know it. I mean, when you consider that we've known all these other languages and so on in previous lives, and now we can't remember them at all, what makes me think that I'm going to, be the same kind of person with the same personality? Like, okay, maybe I'll be born as the cat in the monastery, but I'll stay awake during all the Dharma teachings. I won't chase any mice. I'll really understand the teachings. I'll be the exceptional cat because I won't really have the mind of an animal. Okay. But when you really think about it, what if you were born as an animal and you had the mind of an animal? Okay, like the little stink bugs, the ones, I don't know what the situation is in Prajna Cottage, but they fall from the ceiling in the bathroom. Almost one a day, like vitamins. And, sometimes they forget. It's amazing. You're standing here, and one time one actually fell on my head. But if I think, what would it be like to be born as a stink bug? Yeah, what do stink bugs think about? What's going on in their mind? It's just a constant effort to stay alive. And if I reduce how I am right now, to the basics, it's a constant effort to stay alive. That's the basic thing. And from when we were babies, we didn't have complex thoughts. All we wanted to do is, eat, sleep, go to the bathroom, and stay alive somehow. Okay. So to begin to consider that what we call I is not something fixed and permanent. Yeah. And that the aggregates that are the basis of designation of I can be very different than our present aggregates, which makes who we are very different from who we are right now. And then if we consider that we could be born as a hell being, and what would that be like? We may get some feeling for it. Or if that's too difficult, think of being born in Afghanistan or in Syria or in Darfur. Or think of being one of the migrants stuck at the border, who's a teenager without a family and is being turned back. Just think of your experience like that to get some familiarity of how you could be very different than who you are now. Okay? And that gives you some feeling for rebirth. Okay? Yeah. And then refuge, as you, for me, refuge really came when I learned thought training and the mind training practices, because when I started practicing those, they really helped me. I could see that, I didn't get as angry, I didn't get as depressed. And then it was like, oh, well, Buddha knew what he was talking about. And the more I understood the basic teachings, the more I had faith in the Dharma teachings I got. So, of course, then that leads to faith in the Sangha, faith in the Buddha. Yeah. And that faith comes from your own experience. And it grows gradually. Refuge is not an on and off light switch. It's something, all these meditations, they're like the dialing light switch, and they just grow deeper in you as you practice them. So it's good to go through them in a cycle, and you can change the cycle to the way it is in the Library of Wisdom and Compassion, if that helps you, if that makes more sense. Um, yeah. And then just be satisfied with gaining more understanding as you do the practice. Yeah. Because things will grow in your mind incrementally. Yeah. And be satisfied with that. And don't worry about, one day you may have a very strong feeling about refuge, but your understanding of rebirth is still, I'm working on it. Yeah. But some feeling of, oh, I was practicing those teachings on anger and they're really helping me. Yeah, the Buddha was onto something. Yeah. So that's fine. Yeah, that's okay. Then just keep building on everything. Okay? Because I know some of us, we're very good students, yeah? And we're very, especially the high achiever neurotics. It's like this, and then this, and this, and this, right? We do everything in order according to the textbook because we're good students, yeah? But you have to have some flexibility in there. Yeah. Okay.